Akira.
Fully.
Yeah.
Return of the Mac.
Yeah.
Welcome to LA.
Thank you, man. So it's what, 2 months?
Yeah, a couple months. Different world, man.
Different world.
Different world. Amazing.
But it's a great day to be alive.
It's a beautiful day to be alive. Truly, truly is.
So I've sort of been tracking a little bit of what's been going on Twitter. We've been in touch a little bit.
Yes.
And it seems that the Meaningwave thing is getting a bit more pickup.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's useful. It's proving useful in people's lives. And I have committed to doing it a lot.
So we did an interview mostly about Jordan Peterson.
Yes.
JBP Wave.
Yeah.
Confront the dragon, get the goal. Confront the dragon, get the goal. Share it with the community.
Now you've expanded into IDW Wave.
Well, as we were talking about last time, you were like, oh, will there be more things? I was like, yes, there are already out lots of other things. And you're like, oh, really? I was like, yes, look, there's... And there was maybe 8 or 10. It was the beginnings of the Meaningwave Universe. I did a poll to check what it was called. It's good to involve other people. Because some people were calling it the Doniverse and some people were calling it the Akiraverse. But consensus is Meaningwave Universe. So it's the Meaningwave Universe. And there are many, many members of the Meaningwave Universe. Obviously, Peterson started it. So Peterson's like Iron Man. If you think of it like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is how I do think about it or conceptualize it. He was kind of like Iron Man, sort of the grounded, tied into the actuality of the world as it was at that point. And now it's sort of gotten a little more esoteric as we've gone on.
Why do this?
Why?
Why do this?
Yeah, that's a good question. It seems like a fucking stupid thing to do. It seems like a ridiculous way to spend your time. Because it's necessary and because it's necessary. You know, music is an incredibly powerful thing, and music works on the frequencies of the galaxy and the universe, and music can really, really change things. Music is a thing that you hear a bit of music, it can take you, it's like a time machine, it's like an emotional time machine, it can transport you decades. Music is incredibly, incredibly powerful, and the things that people talk about within popular music mostly for the past 40 years have been a pretty narrow range of sort of thoughts and emotions which have usually been tied to the experience of the teenager, pretty much. And there's this thing in music when people, and rap and so, like all aspects of music, people constantly feel they need to be pretending to be a certain age, like it's the experience of the 16 to 24-year-old, and anything outside of that is deemed culturally bad or something. And this is silly, and this has led to some really silly stuff, and it's led to people pretending to be what they're not, and it's led to a massive part of the human experience not being put within music, which is kind of dumb. Part of why I did it was because I was waiting to be wise enough to make my 3rd album, and I wasn't wise enough yet. Like, I hadn't lived enough of life. I was able to make my 1st album and it'd be perfect, and because that was about being a kid. And I was able to make my 2nd album and that was perfect because that was about a person realizing they're no longer a kid. But to make the album that's basically about being a man, like a real fucking interconnected, like fully actualized man, I wasn't quite there yet because I hadn't reached the level of experience and wisdom I needed to. So I started making instrumental music and sampling people who were smarter and wiser than me, because they'd been there, and you know, Peterson has spent 40 years thinking about certain things, and therefore he has a good understanding of those things. There are people out there who know a fuck of a lot of stuff, but those experiences hadn't necessarily been put in music before. So I put them in music, and now people have that, and it's proving very, very useful in people's lives. And I get hundreds of messages every day at this point from people who are like, this has completely changed my life. I listen to this in the gym, or I listen to this on the way to work. I play this to my father, so now he understands things, or I play this to my children so they understand things, or whatever the hell it is. It's like a thing that was missing in the culture.
Because there's also something about the way the music relaxes the system and allows the words to come in.
Yes.
Is that something that's deliberate, or is that something?
Yes. Yeah, it's very deliberate. And it's a constant refinement process of getting better at it. I think I'm a lot better at it now than I was when I started. And again, the whole just insist. I release 3 things a week. So sticking to that schedule is very difficult, and it involves a lot of working out systems and refining ways of becoming faster and more efficient, but also just getting better. And it is really important that it works rhythmically and that it works unconsciously, and there isn't anything in there that kind of sticks out and ruins the overall flow effect. You should be able to listen to it without focusing on the words, and you should be able to listen to it while focusing on the words. And there should be enough of it that's hooky and catchy like a regular pop song that you could maybe hum along to it or have a little bit that you remember, but also it needs to have the depth that the subject is coming across properly, and you can take it in at a decent speed.
What's the biggest challenge with making something? Like, is it finding the words? Is it finding the original content?
I think it's doing justice to the truth of it, and the spirit of it is the tricky thing. Well, the hardest thing. And it seems to get harder as it goes along, while in some ways it gets easier. In that, like, I'm paying attention to synchronicity and I'm sort of flowing and I'm moving very fast. But it's also like just harder and harder and harder because I'm ever more aware of the gravity of it and that it's important to people. So I can't fuck up, and it has to be. And I know, these are. If you're taking the words of someone who's spent 30, 40 years thinking about a thing, then you better do justice to how those words are presented. And you'd better not misrepresent those words, while at the same time making it funky.
Excruciating weirdness. People are just not pushing the right buttons.
Terence McKenna album just dropped, which I suppose is like Doctor Strange entering. Suddenly you've got all these psychedelic possibilities. And as we were talking about last time, I've been predicting this swing back into sort of psychedelia and people being interested in more out there concepts, whether it be sort of psychedelic-y, acid-y type stuff or chaos magic, and lo and behold, all this stuff seems to be kicking off already.
And so what ended up happening was there was a break in the frame, there was a glitch in the matrix, break in the frame, there was a glitch in the matrix, break in the frame.
Like, we got in touch at first because you remixed the Glitch in the Matrix film.
Boom, classic.
I'd not really thought about it at the time, but the making of Glitch in the Matrix was my kind of leap out of one world into another one. I'd find it quite awkward, I think, to go into a newsroom with someone who and an organisation that I'd pretty much criticised in that
and
film.
Presumably you would find it very limiting, given like now your scope is kind of, you can sit down and have conversations about whatever you want for as long as you want.
Yeah.
The only limit is your imagination.
Yeah.
Presumably, there's not even, lengths or whatever, there's no bandwidth limitations. So
Yeah.
presumably going back into that system, you would feel somewhat confined.
Yeah, true. And it also, it's like, what's the right lens to look at what's going on at the moment? And I think we're in the kind of times where the right lens is not the political. It's not the kind of all the surface level kind of analysis is just becoming less and less apparent, because what we're dealing with is, I think we're dealing with a kind of phase shift, a potential phase shift in, and this is the time when all of these really deep questions of what are your axioms, what are your assumptions about the world, what are becoming increasingly relevant. I mean, we've talked in the Rebel Wisdom kind of podcast, we've talked about the end of the age of materialism. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a return of kind of the archetypal, we're seeing a return of the kind of intuitive, we're seeing a return of, as Peterson is kind of the herald of this kind of the reintegration of the sacred as well.
Yeah, well,
and all these things are kind of these vast
these
forces.
worlds.
Yeah.
Between the sort of archetypical and the sort of grounded on full-blown materialism.
Yeah, he's a scientist.
Yeah, yeah, but also with sort of like an interest in the divine, and he doesn't a lack of scorn for certain concepts. And again, this is like we were talking about before, this sort of swing from the hard material back into the sort of psychedelic, and we've kind of gone through this intense, dark political period of everyone screaming at each other and wishing death upon each other and flinging around horrible words and splitting up with their families and divorcing their wives and all these things over ridiculous stuff. But we're swinging back, and as we swing back, we swing up, and we can look down upon this stuff rather than being sort of down.
Because you think we're going into a new sort of psychedelia time?
Yeah, we're definitely doing that. And that's great, and you can see that everywhere. People are just, the concepts people are getting interested in and talking about, the drugs that people are starting to mention, the colours in clothes. You saw this with Kanye West, who's always on the cutting edge of this stuff. And aside from sort of shifting the culture with music, he's been doing it with clothes for many years now as well. His previous collection was all this dark stuff. The joke was like you couldn't tell if it was a homeless person or someone wearing $2,000 Yeezy jacket. But it was just this dark sort of like military-ish. And his new collection is all sort of rainbow stuff. It's all Woodstocky, sort of like bright colours, joyfulness, sunshine, smiles, or this type of thing. And you see that kind of thing everywhere.
Because you were saying 7 years. Does that fit?
Yeah, you have
or is it getting I wonder whether it might be getting faster.
No, it stays the same, but it's like each time it bangs in one direction, it kind of gets sort of heavier. So you have like the mini ones, which are 7 years, then you have like much larger ones, which are more like 60 years, but I haven't worked out exactly what that is. But we're going back into psychedelia right as of now, like as of the past few months. But it's going to be way bigger this time because of the way things are online and because of us all being interconnected and the lessons we've learned in the past few. So it's going to be a much huger psychedelic explosion, and because we're all so connected, it's going to have permanent effects on the sort of culture at large. And the brain, what do you call the sort of, the main thing is when you think about the consciousness is an overused word, but just look at videos of people in the 70s versus people now. It's a completely different species, and the species that's emerging right now is a completely different one to that which we're used to. And you see most of the people you see on televisions are a different species to the species that's emerging now, and the species that's watching these things online, and it's going to be really instrumental in where the culture's going.
Did you see, we did an interview with Michael Pollan, the guy, food writer who's just released a book about psychedelics called How to Change Your Mind. And
Is this the one last week?
It was about a couple of weeks ago. But one of the questions I asked him, because he's a New York Times best-selling writer, one of the sort of top 100 writers. He's like the Malcolm Gladwell of food almost. Right. And he's he studied it for a few years, did his own psychedelic trips, and has now released a book about it. And my question to him was, is this the most significant moment in the psychedelic renaissance? And the answer is yes. I can't say who, but someone very close to me watched it and immediately said, I want to try this. And he said in the interview he has a way of writing about things that makes people want to do them.
Yes.
And this is by far the most significant kind of public validation of psychedelics. So it makes perfect sense that this would come up now. Of it. Yeah,
it's literally happening everywhere. Every Joe Rogan conversation suddenly, after 6 years of it being quite like hardcore live stuff, material stuff, it's suddenly back in that world again. It's people coming on talking about like treating depression with ketamine and psychedelics and stuff. It's suddenly this big thing. Just over the past few weeks, everyone's talking about it. Terence McKenna's brother was hosting a psychedelic science conference in Los Angeles last Sunday. Just suddenly popped up, and it's all becoming very mainstream.
I should make it clear, I don't believe this stuff. I find believing in these high-flown, complicated synthetic systems to come off sort of like pathology.
The whole thing with the psychedelics thing is it's one of those things that, and people always said this, once you do it, it changes you fundamentally, and you suddenly, aspects of the world that were closed previously open up.
Yeah.
And anyone who's done it will tell you that, and anyone who seems to have any kind of major influence on things on a scientific level or a cultural level has usually had some experience like that. So once it cracks open on the mainstream and everyone does it, that means everyone, all the stuff, all the little corridors and ideas that the internet's opening up in people's minds, once that's coupled with the real life thing, as we've spoke about previously, it's very important for us to move these online discussions into the real world and these online experiences into the real world. And the psychedelic thing, I believe, is going to be a massive part of that. And once those doors are opened, they cannot be closed. Once these what was in Pandora's box? Genies. Once these genies are out of these lamps And once these Pandora's boxes are open, they cannot be undone. And that's us forever shifted onto the next phase.
Because psychedelics can also, I was thinking about this the other day, it's like, it also makes people very susceptible to conspiracy theories. It makes people very susceptible to, it's like, you may stop believing in the kind of traditional story of society, but you become very susceptible to believing all kinds of other shit.
Yes, and this happened in the previous psychedelic cycle, and then we went out of that, and then the conspiracy people, it was weird how the conspiracy thing flipped and CNN suddenly became InfoWars and vice versa in a weird in a very strange sort of fashion. But you have to kind of have that because people have to be able to open to new ideas, and part of being open to new ideas is also, being open to bad ideas or silly ideas or what have you. But we're in this new period of being open to new ideas. But we have a toolkit now. Toolkit seems to be in vogue as a word lately. Anyway, we have a better toolkit for dealing with these things, and because we're all connected together in these larger networks, and because we've been listening to these 3-hour conversations with smart people, a lot of the things that we were drawn to in the first phase of the internet, conspiratorial wise, it's been done, so you can't do it again. So once you've gone into that particular little pocket and you've looked at all those ones and you've come out and you've worked out what was real and what wasn't, it's not that you're just going to repeat that. It means this time we're going to look at sort of bigger ideas and deeper ideas, and we're going to go further and deeper. And there will be some nonsense in there, but there will be some deep, amazing truths which will help us reach deep within our pasts and go forth to Mars. McKenna was talking about
you'll
this.
DJ.
What's that? Where I will be DJing. McKenna was talking about this at the end of as society collapses or a part of it dies. Whenever that happens, the smart people of the time will look into the deep past for something valuable to move it forward. I think what was he talking about?
The archaic?
What's that? The archaic revival,
yeah,
as he calls it. Yes, and he was talking about this in '91, but I think it's very relevant to right now.
With Rupert Sheldrake, who we interviewed as well. Quite recently.
You guys, see, you're deep in the heart of all this stuff. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah, that's where we're at right now. And we have our Council of Wise Men, of which the IDW are a part. They're one of these councils of wise men. And
yeah, that's my sense with the IDW, is that it's an early, almost like a placeholder for the growth of this conversation. It's like a kind of line in the sand of, these are people who are prepared to speak their truth. These are people who are not prepared to be kind of shamed by the mainstream media into not talking about certain subjects. But I think it's almost like a beachhead that then...
They're like first over the hill.
Yeah, it's sort of a beachhead that then allows a bigger conversation to take place.
Yeah, because as we were saying earlier, a couple of years ago people were terrified to talk about certain things in public in a way that they're not as terrified now. And I feel that has shifted massively just over the past few months. I'm seeing this in real life, I'm seeing this in clubs, I'm seeing this on the street, I'm seeing people who previously were keeping their mouths shut because they were just a bit scared. And we're in Los Angeles here, by the way, which is very sort of consensus. Everyone's terrified of saying the wrong thing because then they'll lose their representation and won't get hired to be in movies and things of that nature, which happens. It happens in a big way. In comics, it's happening in a big way. It's happening in everything. But people are a lot less scared right now in the summer of 2018 than they were in the spring of 2018. And people are having these conversations, and people are openly kind of like mocking people who try and throw sort of Nazi and things at them for discussing stuff. That's now, you mentioned this earlier, it's on British Channel 3 and Channel 4 or something, right? There are sketch comedies
BBC,
sort of mocking this stuff. So that's great. But as you said, this is just the beginning. It's the beginning of these conversations, and the bigger ones are to be had as we move into this new glorious eon. You seem a lot more optimistic than the last time I spoke to you.
I'm optimistic, and also this is the paradox. It's like, and I think both of these things are true at the same time. You can look at things like Steven Pinker and say, look at all of these indices, we are more wealthy, we have more kind of freedom, all this stuff, then this is the greatest day to be alive in human history. That is absolutely true.
It so is. Look at it, it's amazing.
But it's also true that we are so interdependent, our technology is at a certain, we are also in a very fragile situation.
Yo, one particularly like excitable sunspot activity would wipe out every hard drive in it, just like that.
Yeah.
Boom. But guess what? We would deal with it instantly because that's what we always do. We're very, very good at that. We adapt very, very, very quickly.
See, I am more pessimistic, but I'm also optimistic at the same time. A lot of the thinkers that I'm following sort of most closely, like Jordan Greenhall, for example, Brett Weinstein as well. I think Eric as well is much more pessimistic than, say, Jordan Peterson.
All of those are. I was thinking about that
because they're talking about, it's like, okay, we are in a better situation in many ways, but we are incredibly fragile and we're so interdependent that the pressures on the system are getting more and more. And I think all of those are true at the same time. And I think actually we are going to be tested more than any. Like, I think we're going into a period of like real conflict and real chaos. But I think we'll come out.
We're already in it.
Yeah, we are. Oh, I think it's going to increase exponentially.
Yeah, it will. But we're more equipped to deal with it than ever we were before.
Yeah.
And the main thing is, the children, who we're the last generation who remember no internet and internet. After that, it's just been internet. And when you're just internet, when you're just a creature of internet, it's a completely different mindset and a completely different way of viewing everything. And those motherfuckers do not have the hang-ups that everyone before them had. And they're much better equipped to deal in the sort of speed that's required and in the kind of flow that's required, a sort of flow stateness. That I've been thinking about this whole thing a lot, but part of the way I've been working in this hyper productive ridiculousness has taught me superpowers in a way that previously I just sort of like suspected. But putting it into practice, like forcing yourself to work every day with this incredible tunnel vision and forcing yourself to rely on instincts and forcing yourself to notice every synchronicity and to act upon that as if those are guideposts, puts you in an incredible flow state where everything suddenly becomes magical and things just seem to happen of their own accord. And if you just keep going and do not stop and do not deviate, then it's just wonderful and insane and magical, and you get an awful lot done, and it's really good, and increasingly so. Being in that kind of state, internet children are way more equipped and ready to exist as that and to accept that as a possible reality and to do that way more than people before them. So as we move into this stuff and all these problems arise and stuff, we're just way better equipped to deal with them in these generations that are rising up. We'll be able to deal with these things wonderfully.
I think it was probably when I first met you, because we connected online on Twitter, and you just so happened to be coming over to the UK afterwards, and you've remixed Glitch in the Matrix, was the first time I realised, having put my stuff out there, that the internet is a machine for generating synchronicities.
Yes,
that's what it's for.
Yes,
because instant reaction,
and
it becomes exponential.
If you keep doing it and you keep moving, and you have to move with the speed of the internet. The speed of the internet is different to the speed of so-called real life. It's a lot faster. A week in the internet is like 6 months in so-called real life. So you have to move with the speed of the internet. You have to be like a shark. You have to keep moving. You have to observe synchronicities and realize that they are signposts for the direction you're going.
And eat steak.
You have to eat steak. Eat steak. Yeah, that's a big part of my success. I'm fueled by steak and meaning. Steak and meaning. That was the other bit that's missing, is you have to have meaning behind what you're doing. And then if meaning is the motivation and synchronicity are the signposts, and you just move like a fucking shark. Water, a river is beautiful and clean and amazing. It's a wonderful thing. But when it sort of gets stopped, it becomes, what does it become, a pond or something? It stagnates, and horrible things grow in it. It's very problematic. It must be like a river. And that's the natural state of internet generation, I believe. So I think that will counteract a lot of the problems. And I think the steam culture idea that Alan Moore used to talk about, that we're now in, wherein we move from the culture of, say, the amount of time it took to go from the invention of the stone axe to the Roman baths, then the amount of time it takes to create the same amount of stuff is half that, and it keeps dividing.
Kind of Moore's law.
Yes, indeed. It's like that. So you go from a fluid culture to a culture where suddenly so much stuff is happening all at once. It's like steam. And we're in that right now. Like, you know, a thing could be invented in 3 minutes that fixes the issue of plastic in the sea or something. And these things, and I'm reading about all this stuff every day. It's like, oh, someone just worked out how to fix that, and someone just worked out how to fix that. These problems that seemed just completely unsurmountable for many, many years, lots of these things are being fixed and will be fixed like very quickly, you know, and then there'll be new problems. But I think we're really, really well equipped to sort out all of our issues. As Peterson said recently, one of the things the whole Joe Rogan podcast, everything phenomenon shows is that we're actually way smarter than everyone gave us credit for. Which if you talk to people, if you actually talk to people and listen to them, you'll know this anyway. You know, I go to pubs and bars where the people apparently supposedly like ignorant, idiot, working class racists who are sneered upon by the London anti-Brexit people and the American anti-Trump people. But you go talk to these people, they're not dumb. And if you listen to them for more than 3 minutes, you'll find they're not dumb. The channels through which things are observed and have been like propagating stuff are dumb. The old media was dumb, and the way it put things across was dumb. And now we're in a brave new world where there is space and room for intelligence and
for people to educate themselves at their own pace.
Exactly. Exactly that. That's a whole other big conversation, the whole education thing. Yeah. That's the thing about this new generation of internet, is they're able to educate themselves on anything that interests them, to as far as they're willing to go down that subject, and they are doing that. And I meet them all the time, and they write to me all the time. I have a Discord now where all my new sort of Meaningwave era fans hang out, and the most active chat room is the philosophy chat room, which is just buzzing all the time. I had to turn notifications off because it's just ping, 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 ping. They're just in there having like really big, deep conversations about stuff and saying, oh, go look at this, and go look at this, and go look at that, and da 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 da. The second biggest room is the memes room, of course. And then, you know, what would usually be the sort of general chat or music or whatever is quite lower down on the list of interest. And these are all, what generation, what's it called? Below millennial. Anyway, whatever it is, those ones are way smarter than we were, and they're way more developed than we were. You know, if you can operate an iPad, which is essentially a supercomputer, you can operate that age 3. What the hell are you going to do when you're 20, 30, or whatever?
My only concern about that generation is that they're growing up within sort of like a public shaming kind of space.
Yeah, well, that's the thing we've got to get through.
The cyberbullying and stuff. Like I think about what I post on Facebook, and there are certain things that I wouldn't post on there. There are certain things that I get pushback for posting, and I'm pretty disagreeable. Like I'm prepared to sort of speak my mind, and I can express myself fairly well. And I think about the generation below, and yet even so, you get kind of publicly shamed or attacked for sharing certain things. And I think the generation below ours, like, it must be really hard to develop your own voice, because if you say something out of line, that someone can say, oh, that's racist or sexist or whatever. That's difficult.
This is a blip. This is a tiny blip. It's something we have to get through to get to the other side. And the other side is when everyone realizes, oh shit, everyone's done something bad. Everyone's got something dark about them. Everyone's got something about them that I don't agree with. That will be the major realization. It might take 10 years to get there or something. But when we get there, everyone knows that everyone else has something about them that's bad, something in their past that's bad, and something about them that you disagree with. And once everyone gets to that point, you're like, okay, we're all the same. And there's going to be a lot of casualties along the way. But we're, like I was saying, I'm already seeing that whole little thing of people worrying about what people are having the wrong opinion and being publicly shamed. That's lessening, and people are getting braver. Yeah. People are getting a lot braver, and they're realizing they're not alone in their various states of sort of shame or wrongness or anguish or what have you. So this is a thing that will be dealt with, and the other side of it is a much freer space, something that none of us ever had before. Yeah. In public, to be sort of connected to the whole world and be able to be yourself completely. in all of its horror and wonder and glory. And as we were talking about earlier, if one sort of mass squeegees everybody, then suddenly everyone is aware of all these other aspects that are out there of reality at all times. That
Probably
are there
a lot of the
always.
aspects that are in here as well, which is pretty terrifying.
Yes. Well, again, then that takes us back to the whole shadow thing and all that, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
The integration of the shadow is an integral part of the moving forward. And that's a bit like what I was saying about the whole getting over the shaming thing. It's like once everyone realizes that everyone has a shadow, first you have to realize you do, then everyone else does, and then everyone works out how best to utilize that stuff and use those forces. Then you have that sort of thing fixed. That's great. Then you all do the sort of psychedelic experience en masse, and then you go, oh shit, look at all these aspects of reality and stuff there are. Isn't this beautiful and wonderful? And we're all connected in this thing. And then you actually are all connected because the whole digital thing has happened.
No, it's a good point. It's like before you do, like in the 60s, people would do psychedelics and go, wow, we're all one. It's like, well, actually now, because of the technology we have, you're pretty close to actually that being true.
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah. So once you add the psychedelic thing to that, so previously those realizations would happen in the corner of a room with a few people. Look, we're all one, but it's only us who are all one, and you can't explain it to anyone else and think you're mad. This time, very fucking different. This time it's a generation of people who already know that we're all one, who already know that we're all connected, who already know any kind of illusion or sort of cultural barriers are silly, and they grew up listening to sort of Japanese reggae and Dutch techno and LA trap at the same time. They don't have any of those sort of cultural barriers that previous generations did. And they truly are all connected by technology in a mental, psychedelic, fucking cyberpunk Blade Runner fashion.
Terrible cultural appropriation.
All that. That's great because that whole intersectionality thing is brilliant because it just destroys itself. So all those people can go destroy themselves. All those people with their sort of very surface, very narrow, very material way of sort of like being angry and upset about the world. That's a thing of the past, and that will eat itself and destroy itself. Meanwhile, over here we can have like big conversations and go to Mars, and it'll be dope.
Yeah.
And
let's
squeegee the third eye.
Squeegee the third eye.
Yeah. R.I.P. Bill Hicks. It would have been really nice for Bill Hicks to have seen all this stuff. He was a cynical person, but he'd had these psychedelic experiences which gave him a little glimmer of hope and sort of wonder for the glory of humanity in all of its splendor.
History is just a 25,000-year dash from the trees to the starship. History is just a 25.
It has been well received. Like I've seen Eric Weinstein tweeting some of it out, and Jordan Peterson tweeting it out. And how does that feel?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. What all one wants in life is to self-actualize and have the respect of one's peers, and to be able to self-actualize, to do what you're good at and makes you sing, makes your soul sing, or makes your soul shine, or whatever it is, and then to get the respect of one's peers is a truly wonderful thing. And it was something I wrote that I wanted to some years ago. I was like, that's basically what I want. But at that point, I thought of my peers being other people who made music, whereas now it's way bigger than that. And now my peers are biologists and musicians and professors and psychologists and all sorts of people, which is wonderful, because that's another thing I wanted to do as well, which was kind of move music or create music that could exist usefully across all these spheres and be useful to all these people. You keep as you get older in life, you see people around you sort of switching off from music and thinking, oh, well, that's for kids or that's for younger people. And then you start hearing these, oh, well, music was way better when I was young, music's all crap now. Because they kind of stop. And everyone associates good music with the first time they got their dick sucked, which is why the top comment on every YouTube video is, oh, music was so much better in my day, whatever that day was. But it's because of, like I was saying, most pop music is kind of not made for people over 24. You know, so creating a music that could be listen. And again, I'm not saying that like pop music is useless when you're over 24, because I listen to a hell of a lot of pop music, and I listen to a lot of so-called ignorant rap music, and I love Little Pump and all that type of stuff. But you know, there's a whole aspect of it that wasn't being served as well as it should, and that could then bring all these people together, perhaps. Yeah, Weinstein. What was it? Eric Weinstein said, "You haven't made it until Akira the Don has turned you into a song," which is true. Well, you haven't.
Yeah, you haven't.
No. But you have.
Yeah.
You were actually very early.
Yeah.
You were very early on that, as a recipient of the blessing of the Don.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It means a lot.
You deserve it. You earned it. You're out there making your ancestors proud, which is what we should all be doing.
Yeah.
We should all be thinking of our ancestors and thinking of everything that they went through, so we could get to this point of hitherto unimaginable luxury and potential here in this incredible summer of love, 2018.
Thank you.
You're welcome.